You're on YouTube.
Okay, now we are.
Okay. I just want to mention that before we went on break, I used a word to characterize the chair of our committee in a joking kind of way, but I think it may have been a rude way of putting it. And I didn't mean to in any way conjure up any painful images or emotions for people of color or anyone else. So I'll tell you what I said. I referred to you as a slave, not to you personally as a joke, but as a slave driver. And as soon as I said it, I felt like I wish I had sort of could put it back into my mouth again, because I knew as soon as the words came out that they were not an appropriate thing to joke around about. So I just want to apologize to anybody who may have felt taken aback by that. I really did not mean any harm or painful for anybody. I apologize.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we are back. And what I'm going to do is, Gwen, if we can have you kind of set the stage for us here so we know what the issue is exactly. And can you do that for us? So first of all, actually, before you, I apologize, before you start, I think this is a group of faces that I'm not very familiar with. You aren't in our committee very often. So I'm going to ask that we introduce ourselves first so that you know who we are and where we're from. I'm Jeanette White. I'm the chair of the committee and I'm from Windham County.
Hi, I'm Anthony Pauline. I represent Washington County.
Senator Brian Collmore from Rutland County.
Senator Keisha Ram from Chittenden County.
And we will be joined by Senator Clarkson from Windsor County, who is currently presenting in another committee. So with that, Gwen, if you would like to set the stage for us here so we are aware of what the issue is.
Thank you, committee. Gwen Zaka, Vermont League of Cities and Towns. I think the other folks that are testifying can do kind of a better backup to what I'm about to say and give sort of the descriptives here. But essentially, when the whole consolidation of school districts started occurring, there was the issue of how to fill vacancies in between elections if there was a vacancy in a school board position, and who's the entity that makes that deciding factor. There was language, I believe it was in Act 11 from 2018 that was in play that had a sunset this summer. And if other folks that are testifying, correct me if I'm wrong, that temporarily allowed select boards to make that decision until the next election, to basically ensure that a local official from that community alone would be the representation for that town or city. But since then, that law is no longer in place. And so now it's no longer in the hands of the select board making that appointment. And I will now carry the baton to the next person to sort of say where the communities are right now, because I'm not exactly familiar with if there's any new concerns since then. But that law sunset, and now the school board, the school districts are making the appointments and the school boards are making the appointments, not the select boards.
So can I just ask a clarifying question about that? Because it's a school district and it involves more than one community, the representative from the town of Putney to the school district board will be the Putney Select Board would have filled that vacancy up until this sunsetted. Now the school board itself, the district board, will make that appointment, and it may or may not be somebody from Putney. Is that?
As far as I understand it, yes.
Okay. All right, great. Any other questions for Gwen to clarify? Okay.
And this is just to say, this is one of those wonky things where it's, your committee versus the education committee, and VLCT, we don't represent school districts. We represent our members, but the select boards are really the only town entity, any governmental entity that really is the representative for a town, even though it's for a school district. So it doesn't really have a home, I guess you can say. I mean, it's a home now in GovOps, but it also impacts education. So
is the education committee addressing this at all that you know of?
As far as I know of, no.
Okay.
I know they took this up back in 2018 when they created that sunset
okay.
provision.
Okay, thank you. So I don't know how we want to proceed here. Senator Collmore, I think you know most of the people who are testifying. So what I'm going to do is let you, I'll run the meeting, but I'll let you figure out what order to go in here because you know best the players. Is that okay?
Certainly it is, Madam Chair. Thank you very
Okay.
much. Yeah. So from what I know about it, this whole thing was occasioned by someone that was on the school board resigning, and the ability or inability of the towns involved to appoint a new member. And that's how this came about. And I don't know whether Gwen's aware of any other municipalities that are in the same situation, but until someone comes off the board, it's not an issue because the school merger happened and we've gone along pretty well with the way things were. But this was occasioned because someone stepped down, and then there was some concern about who was the appointing party to replace that person on the school board. So I don't know. I know there are varying views of how we might go about doing that. Lynn Edmonds is the one that contacted me first. So Lynn,
Okay.
if you want to go ahead and just let us know what the situation is and how you have a view of how we could fix it. And you're muted.
Thank you.
You need to unmute, Lynn.
Yeah, you're muted, Lynn.
Okay,
There.
sorry. I don't do these very often. This is only my second one. The main reason I got involved in this was because I got a call from Robert Congdon from Clarendon because he knew that he's a friend of mine, and he knew that I had been involved in following our town plan recertifications back in 2017. And that's when I got kind of frustrated with how things work and how the general populace seemed to be powerless when we went to meetings and tried to get anything changed or done. So I had my perspective in this whole thing is from the general public that tries to understand some of this stuff can't because they're not able to understand the statute. It's kept at length. So I did a little write-up that I submitted earlier, and to give you an idea of where I'm coming from. I in a previous life, some more than 30 years ago now, I was an industrial engineering supervisor with UPS, and I used to do a lot of work measurement study and problem solving and such. So I just wrote down kind of in a report form of what I would do of an analysis based on my understanding of what is going on. And I know when I started into this, I didn't have all the understanding of what had happened with Act 32. And then Ken, for that, was good enough to put an article out. I spent a day trying to find out how that transpired, and I never realized probably I had the answer right here in town. I didn't realize it. So that was very helpful in understanding the lay of the land. And perhaps when that was changed, the school board at that point in time was being an elected body, had a similar authority as a select board would, but the rub comes in when you mix other towns in. So you've diluted the access from some of the people now because of this change. So at any rate, the thoughts that I jotted down and submitted, I hope people will take the time to read through them. And if you don't understand them, you feel free to call me or talk to me about it. This isn't something that I necessarily understand to be etched in stone, but these are my feelings from my perspective. And I think people are frustrated in general. If you go, and that's why we have so much divisiveness. There's things that it's really hard to navigate this stuff from the layman's point of view. And the only thing we have left really is that we have the authority to appoint people to represent us or to elect people to represent us. Everything else seems to be coming down from the top, not generating at our level and going up. So that's the frustration.
So Lynn, let me just interrupt if I could, because you still haven't really put the issue. The issue is there's no one from Clarendon on the school board. Isn't that the issue?
No, the issue is there are four representatives on the school board from Clarendon. Now there are only 3. And I think Todd spelled that out in his article in the Herald, but there's like 10 total board members, but only 3 when the school board goes to appoint. The town of Clarendon only has 3 votes in the appointment, as opposed to 7 from other towns, and that just doesn't seem right.
Okay, so we've got a merged school district that you feel Clarendon is underrepresented by having only 3 members. Would
Correct.
that be a correct statement? Okay.
Well, they are in terms of authority, I guess, in terms of the authority to reappoint this vacancy, that's been taken away by virtue of the fact that the school board now is the one that gets to appoint. And that's a school board that's primarily made up of members from other towns at this point.
So can I ask what, without going into a lot of detail, or can you just tell us what your solution would be?
I would put it back. I think it should be put back to the select board.
Okay.
The problem is this isn't just a Clarendon problem. This is going to keep reoccurring
Right.
throughout the state. And just because it doesn't happen very frequently doesn't mean it shouldn't be corrected. And there, as I pointed out in the write-up that I submitted, that this goes a long way to creating an atmosphere of cooperation and trust. And even though it may seem insignificant to people and it isn't focusing on the issues of the day, I think it's a very important thing to get right. And because that establishes the tone for everything else that goes on around. And that's important to the people.
Okay. So Ken, maybe you want to weigh in at this point and give us your kind of perspective? And there you go.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for this opportunity to speak. A couple of clarifications, something Gwen said about the time frame. It was actually the first change to, I'll back up the truck. I think people are getting now that back in 2005, it shifted from select boards to school boards to fill vacancies on their local boards. And so it's been that way for almost 16 years. Now, with the advent of Act 46, more and more districts started becoming unified unions. At the time, back in 05, I saw that part of the law and I said, what does that mean? If a town doesn't operate a school board, the select board does it. It didn't register with me that it was unified unions they were talking about. So what happened is Mill River became a unified union in 2016. We were one of the first in the state after Act 46. It was Rutland Northeast and Mill River were the first 2 after Act 46. And we realized that that part of the law hadn't gotten changed from select boards to school boards. So that did get changed. We proposed that it didn't say anything about school boards at all in the law at the time about unified unions, applicable to unified unions. So we put forth a proposal from Mill River that the select board would at least consult with the school board. And then we'd cooperate and make an appointment. And that got changed to just the school board fills the appointment along the road to it becoming a bill and a law and all that. And we said, fine, we're good with that. And in most cases, you know, there's not a problem. Select boards, and it shouldn't be a problem. I got an email from the chair of Champlain Island Unified Union yesterday when he saw my piece in Digger and said, we get along well with our select board, and this wasn't a problem. They had a vacancy occur during that window last year that Gwen was talking about. Am I saying your name right, Gwen? But
It's Gwyn, but you're close enough. It's fine.
Gwen, thank you.
Just
Sorry
follow
about that. But what happened was the law changed in 2017 under miscellaneous education, which senators, you'll probably remember that happens a lot in legislative session, technical corrections to education law. So that was Act 49 in 2017, and it sunsetted for some reason. We didn't realize it was sunsetting, but it sunsetted in July of 2018. So in 2018, it was refreshed again under an appropriations bill, Act 11. That's what you were talking about. This was the first time it had been refreshed, so to speak. And then last year, it expired because it was last year. What went right in 2020 for anybody, right? You know, so it expired for a few months from July 1st until October 2nd. And in that time, it went back to select boards to fill the vacancies. Didn't get on anybody's radar screen, I think, or not too many. But it isn't a case, as been said, that I've heard it said that it got slipped in at the last second in last year's legislative session, or it was taken away from the select board, given back, and now it's been taken away again. It's really not all that fuzzy about it. It just expired last year because of the unusual legislative session. So I hope that clarifies things. Senator Collmore, as far as the representation goes on the Mill River Board, it's 4 from Clarendon, 4 from Wallingford, 2 from Shrewsbury, and 1 from Timoth. And that is all based on what the census was in 2015 when we were working on the Articles of Agreement. So it was representative of how many people in each town. And another point is this, to this issue of Clarendon doesn't have a say, it should be Clarendon or Wallingford or whomever, whatever select board. It's when we were forming up this unified union, I ran into a lot of citizens, we ran into a lot of citizens that were saying, well, what about our kids? It's our kids, it's our school, Shrewsbury, Clarendon, Timoth, wherever. And I promoted, we need to stop thinking about it as so local, so our, you know, we're going to hang on to this with both hands. Kind of as far as education is concerned, let's erase the town lines. And it's one district, very similar to Rutland City. One board runs everything pre-K through 12. And kids in Mill River now, Shrewsbury can go to Clarendon, Clarendon can go to Timoth. It's like, it's kind of free moving. And Clarendon does have a say in the matter. There is absolutely no reason this has to be so controversial. We can just work together. The Mill River Board is not going to appoint somebody that Clarendon is going to go, oh my God, or any of the other towns are going to say that. They're looking for somebody who is interested in education issues, watching the bottom line for the taxpayers. And there's no reason that Clarendon and the Clarendon Select Board and the Mill River Board can't come to an agreement that everybody can live with. And I'm a classic example. You know, I was actually appointed by the Wallingford Select Board in 1998 to fill a vacancy on the Wallingford Elementary Board. And look how good I turned out, huh? But I would be glad to go on or come back. I hope I answered questions about the makeup. Right now, it's normally an 11-member board. Right now, there is one missing from Clarendon. So the remaining 10 board members will discuss. But as I understand, the chair of the Mill River Board and the chair of the Clarendon Select Board have been in communication, and Mill River is going to be interviewing people. And I've got my fingers crossed that this will just all be fine. But clearly, you wouldn't have a fire department filling a vacancy on a police department. We hear select boards talking about, in 05, I heard it time and time again. balance of power. We need a balance of power. I said, fine, okay, so school boards should fill vacancies on select boards. And they all went, no, that's crazy talk. What are you talking about? We all just need to work together on this. But there is nobody better attuned to what a school member needs to have in their toolbox, so to speak, or whatever, than other school board members. They know education. These school board members, most of them, have been on for the long haul. We've got a pretty good change over this year. The Mill River Board is balanced. And again, we can work this out, but it should, the final authority for school boards should be with the school board, in my opinion.
Okay.
And that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Thanks.
Let me ask Robert Congdon if he wants to weigh in, and then we'll get to Todd.
Thank you, Senators, for allowing us to join you today. And I am a select board member in the town of Clarendon. Here as an individual, I'm not representing officially the select board in any fashion, but I would contradict what Mr. Fredette just stated in his testimony by simply stating that the people of the town of Clarendon are the ones who know best who should represent them on the school board. So the reality comes down to who is going to pick that replacement, when literally weeks ago on their March ballot, the people of the town of Clarendon elected one of their school board representatives. It was not the school board that elected that person. So when this takes place and we're facing this vacancy now, I have constituents calling me, reaching out to me on Facebook, who are saying our voice is going to be taken away potentially by not having the ability to say and to vote on who they want to represent them. By giving that power to 2 representatives from Shrewsbury, 3 representatives from Wallingford, 1 representative from Tinmouth, and then there's only 2 other votes left on the board for the appointment, which are from Clarendon, the Clarendon voice is greatly diminished. There's, no matter how you look at it, and we can talk about unity and we can talk about all of those things, which is great. I wholeheartedly agree that we should be unified. I wholeheartedly agree that we should be able to come to that consensus. However, the fact comes down to the people's voice. And in this case, we ultimately have 2 options. We are not permitted to cast we are allowed to suggest, we're allowed to offer dialogue with the Mill River United School Board at this point, but we are not allowed to cast a decision in that process. And that's what the individuals who are reaching out to me in the town of Clarendon are upset about. They very much want it to be in the hands of Clarendon representatives, which in this case is why the select board makes the most sense. And then also our other option. So that's the first option. The second option is the statute currently allows for a special election. And there is, because of the fact that town meeting day just occurred, and we're just coming off of that, there has been significant amounts of talk of holding that special election and giving the Clarendon voters their ultimate voice in that decision-making process. So there's a lot of discussion here. I know there's a lot of viewpoints, but I think it ultimately comes down to who should have this authority. And the individuals that are reaching out to me are saying that it should definitely be Clarendon and Clarendon's representatives that have that authority to make their, the person who represents them. It should not be a diminished voice by having those other board members from other towns ultimately make that decision for us. That is what is not setting well in the town of Clarendon at this point. And again, going out to the big picture, this is not just a Clarendon issue. Virtually every district around us here in central Vermont, if there was a vacancy, would face this very issue. And I think, from my perspective and individuals that I've talked to, even from other towns, I actually had individuals reach out to me from Shrewsbury, which I know is where Todd's from, who said, if this was a vacancy on the board from our town, we would want the say of who replaces that seat. We wouldn't want Clarendon, Wallingford, and Tinmouth deciding who replaces that Shrewsbury seat. We would want it to be our representatives, our home populace, who makes that decision, which is why I think that from my perspective, taking the 30,000 foot view of this, I would say, giving the town the ultimate authority, whether it be going back to the select board or I realize an election at a vacancy is not always a reality. I mean, we're early in this year since the town meeting that it certainly is a possibility right now. But from the 30,000 foot level, it's a responsibility, and it is something that should rest solely with the town, and should go back to the select board members. Thank you for your time.
Forgive my ignorance here, but if somebody can help me remembering this, I'm not on the education committee. I never have been. And so a lot of the details around the mergers and the unified districts and stuff escape me. I don't know a lot of the details around it, but I do know that when we were looking at the merger down here, there were, and I don't remember the number, but say there were 3 representatives from Putney and 3 from Dummerston, 3 from Guilford, and 5 from Brattleboro. But the Putney representatives, that's my town, that's why I use that. The Putney representatives were voted on by the entire district. They weren't just voted on by, that was the original proposal. And I don't know if that is the case now, or if that's district by district, that it's that way, but it was a general election in the district to vote on the representatives from Putney. And I don't know if that's general, the way it happens generally, or if that's up to the district itself, how they did that, or if that was something that didn't fly anyway. Does anybody know here what I'm talking about? And if, yeah. Ken?
Yeah, I'm not sure about your particular situation, Senator, but the situations I'm familiar with is currently the unified unions, Wallingford votes on Wallingford reps, Clarendon votes on Clarendon reps.
Okay.
There are situations that, again, I'm not familiar with, and I don't know if that's your situation down south there, that they have at-large members. So the entire district votes for all the board members. But that that causes me some pause, because it could really, the larger towns could really just load the school board and the little towns would be left out. That's not the case that we have here.
Okay, that clarifies. Yeah, that clarifies that for me. And I don't know how it ended up here, but that was an issue that I was concerned about also when they were first proposing the bylaws or the charter or whatever it was called. But okay, thank you.
Todd, go ahead. Please.
Oh, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my 2.5 cents worth, folks. My name is Todd Fillmore. I'm a resident of Shrewsbury, and I've been kind of deeply involved in certain issues and aspects of school board activities over the past 9 or 10 months in the Mill River District. So I've been kind of watching a lot of things unfold. I think Mr. Fredette kind of actually lays out the real crux of the issue when he said that, in his view, he'd like to erase town lines. And that's exactly what is at stake here. And that concept, although it may seem appealing, is a flagrant violation of the Vermont Constitution. And I think in all the deliberations regarding Act 46 and so forth, some certain basic foundational laws and rights that flow from our Vermont Constitution have been left in the lurch. I mean, if you look at the Constitution, it opens with a declaration of the rights of the inhabitants of the state of Vermont. So these are rights. And it clarifies that these are unalienable rights. These rights can only be set aside by specific legislative action. When you go down to our chapter 1, article 8, we find a very clear depiction of how those rights play out in electoral process, that all elections ought to be free and without corruption, and that all voters having a sufficient, evident common interest with and attachment to the community have a right to elect officers and be elected into office agreeably to the regulations made in this Constitution. So there is a constitutional connection built right in that gives all community voters the right to elect their officers of their choosing. No matter how we look at this present circumstance, if we allow 7 board members from neighboring towns to pick and choose the representatives for the town of Clarendon, we are bypassing, if not actively suppressing, that core constitutional right. So, I'm not sure how this all unfolded, but to my mind, this is very, very simple. If at all possible, the electorate of any given town should retain the right, in as much as possible, to select a replacement, temporary or otherwise, when a vacancy occurs. So, simple solutions that come to mind would be, if we're going to allow the school board to appoint this member, then by rights it should only be limited, the voting should only be limited to those school board members from the affected town, in this case Clarendon. To allow Wallingford or even Shrewsbury, I would not want to see my own school board representatives having authority over replacement for Clarendon. It's just plain wrong on its face. I think that this piece of legislation should really be kicked back and looked at through the clear lens of the Constitution. This really belongs in the wheelhouse of the voters. And since the voters can't spin on a dime in this case, because we've got to fill this vacancy fairly quickly, the next best thing is, of course, the select board, who were elected by the very same electoral body. So to my mind, it's a pretty straightforward problem and a straightforward solution. Now, whether or not we can get the select board and the school board to cooperate on this, that's a different matter. And if I may, I'd like to open up a little bit of a can of worms that kind of complicates the present situation. The Mill River Select Board, or excuse me, Mill River School Board, has been involved in some very controversial political issues that have really caused a lot of division in all 4 towns. And that is still playing out even after the most recent March elections. In fact, we currently have a school board chair who is currently involved in an informal hearing regarding alleged misconduct. All of this stuff is going to be dragged into the school board decision to initiate a replacement. So I think it's fair to say that it's not likely that we're going to see a nice, clean process if the school board is allowed full authority over this situation, as is shown in statute currently. So what the legislature can do about that, I don't know. I'm just a person who reads the law, tries to pay attention to current events and local issues. I would leave that in your ball court, I suppose. But I think the Constitution is clear on this, folks, with all due respect.
So the person that stepped down, when did that term expire? And why is the need felt that we need to do this quickly to get a replacement?
That's a good question, Senator Collimore. To my recollection, I think George Ambrose's position ends next year. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. So I'm not sure. Maybe Ken knows. Go ahead, Robert.
Town meeting 2022.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. So there's one more year left on this term. And right, wrong, or indifferent, I'm not here to judge exactly how things played out and why they played out the way they did. But Mr. Ambrose resigned the day after town meeting day, which is, I think, what it inflamed the Clarendon the Clarendon citizens a little bit even more when the word got out, was that, wait a minute, we just had an election. If this was coming down the pike, why didn't it happen, all of 2 months before, so that they could have had their voice? And I think that is, whether or not it's true or not, I'm not here making accusations, and I don't believe it's true. It gives that visual picture of it adds to the controversy. And I'm not here to talk about the controversies. I think the school board controversies are something totally separate that need to be left out of
A
this
jacket
conversation.
pocket. Oh, it's on the dash.
I firmly believe that this really, again, comes back, like I finished just a few minutes ago, this comes back to more of a representation issue and who gets the say in that representation. The controversies are a side issue in my mind. That should not be the focus of this type of discussion. This discussion really centers around who is the representation that deserves this say. That's where I would leave it.
Okay. Do any of the other committee members have questions? I didn't mean to dominate the discussion here, but Senator Rahm or Senator Polina? No? Okay. Ken, I saw your hand was up.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. I knew somebody was going to catch me on that erasing the town lines thing, Todd, but to be expected, and rightly so. And I never finished that thought. So I will now. What I was saying to these people is, as far as education goes, as far as the kids go, let's erase the town lines. We're all one big district. It's not Shrewsbury kids. It's not Clarendon kids. It's not Wallingford, Timoth. It's Mill River kids. And they can move about our district, go to different schools without restrictions now under this governance structure. I did not in any way, shape, or form mean to actually erase town lines and blur everything together. I was talking about opportunities for the kids and to think Mill River instead of the individual towns. Back to what Robbie was just saying, I know George Ambrose quite well, and I've known him for years. And I called him up and said, George, you did it after town meeting. People are going to say you did that on purpose. He said, well, yeah, probably. He said, but he actually had very noble reasons for waiting until he did, to just make sure the budget got passed, make sure the dust had settled. We've had a lot of divisiveness in this election year. And George is a good man. He did not have anything nefarious planned here. And also about the Constitution, education is the only public service mentioned in the Vermont Constitution. There's nothing about plowing roads. There's nothing about any municipal services at all. The only thing is we'll keep an appropriate number of schools for educating our kids. And again, I come back to who knows better about that than school boards. I could relate some horror stories. Hopefully, in most places in the state, select boards and school boards would get along fine. This would not be a problem.
We lost you.
Oh, I flipped my microphone up, duh. I'm not a real good Zoom guy either, so bear with me. I've done it a few times, but now I lost where I was.
Well, that's okay.
There are horror stories from 05 and beyond that I heard from all over the state in 05 that was like, it's just a battle. And it doesn't need to be that way. So, as I understood at the beginning of this particular situation, somebody had previously written to the Clarendon Select Board to express an interest if a vacancy came up. That was back in January. This person wrote a letter. And I believe it was being considered. I could be wrong about this, but I was talking to the Clarendon Select Board chair. He says, we already have a person interest. We can just appoint them. But then they found out they don't have that authority. So that's a little bit spooky to me. How we handle it on a school board, how I always handled it, and how Mill River is handling it. Is put it out there to the public, let people come in, they be interviewed. It's all thoughtful. The select board can be involved in this. There's no reason for this to be adversarial. But to just rubber stamp somebody because they sent a letter prior to the vacancy even occurring is a little, that concept's a little troubling to me. So thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as a select board member, I feel that I need to respond to that accusation because we have very specific guidelines that are laid out as to how appointments take place. And that position would have absolutely been posted for a minimum of 14 days. And there would have been a very specific process. So any accusations being made that are making it sound like there's something nefarious going on are totally unfounded.
Well, thank you for clarifying that. I misunderstood what Mike had said, I guess. It was a phone conversation. And another piece of legislation I'm supporting these days is the hearing aids bill. So I appreciate you clarifying that, Robert. I should have known better.
Todd?
Yeah, very briefly. If the roles were reversed in that if the school board was given advisory capacity, but the final decision rested with the select board, I don't think we would be having this discussion right now. But that's not the case. The law has those two roles reversed. So the Clarendon Select Board or any other town select board in a similar situation only has advisory capacity. In the end, statutory authority is fully given to the school boards. Therein lies the problem. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. I see we've been joined by Senator Clarkson, who unfortunately has missed most of the discussion here, but we'll be glad to fill her in. Madam Chair, I'm going to cede the meeting back to you.
Well, I think that, I mean, I have mixed feelings about this because I do think that school boards are in a position to know what they need on the school board. However, the representatives are from a particular town, and whether or not the residents of that town are electing the right people. I mean, if you had the school board picking the people, they might not pick the same people that are elected by the town, and whether that's a good thing or not, it is the town's people that are responsible for sending that person. And I appreciated, Todd, your suggestion about having the other members on the school board from that town do it, but that is fraught also with problems because you might have three people on that school board that have a very, very different orientation than the person who left. And the person who left was voted in presumably because of their particular stance. So now you have the potential for losing that. And it would be also very hard if it was the person from Tinmouth who resigned, because there is nobody else from Tinmouth to do that. So I think that what we need to do here, committee, I don't think we're going to solve this today. But I think what we need to do is we need to hear a little bit from our attorneys, from Tucker Anderson, and who is our municipal attorney. He deals with municipal issues, and perhaps Jim Damaris, just have him. He's the attorney for the education committee, so he deals with a lot of the education issues, and just have a conversation with them about this. And does that make sense, committee? Because we need to be able to do it in a way that's fair to people, that gives the townspeople the person they want. But we also need to look at what the law is and why it was done that way. And if we're going to change, what changes might need to be made. And I don't think we're in a position to do any of that today. Senator Collmore?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, no, I agree. And I don't think anybody that came to our discussion today ever thought we were going to find that magic wand and just wave it and say, okay, it's all fixed, let's go home. Because the other thing we have to do, we can't just fix the problem for the Mill River Union School District. We have to fix the problem statewide, because as everybody pretty much has pointed out, this isn't going to just be a one-time thing. Other people will come off school boards in the future, and we need to have something in place. It's unfortunate that we let it sunset, and I had no idea about it until this issue came up with this particular situation. So I really appreciate everybody taking their time out. I know, that it's in the middle of the afternoon on a work day and you gave up some time, but I really think you clarified the issue for us pretty well. We know what we have to decide. And I know if we decide one way, there's going to be people just like everything else we do. If we vote yes on a law, there's people that wish we didn't, and we have the other way. So I agree with the chair. We'll have to take further testimony on this. And but I thank you all for coming here today. And if any of the other committee members want to weigh in, or Gwen again, That's fine. Maybe we
I
can-
am just going to say that before I go to Senator Polina, that we will keep you on the list for invites for when we do this, when this comes up again, so that you can attend or just watch, but feel free to join us the next time we take this up. Senator Polina, did you have a?
Well, I don't have any particular wisdom to share. I just was going to agree that we really need to think this through a bit more. And my bottom line is to do what we can to make sure that the local voices are heard in this process, make sure that local people are well represented in the decision making. I'm not really sure how best to do that at this point. I mean, I've heard good arguments on both sides of multiple sides of the issue actually this afternoon. So I think we do need to just let it sink in and talk more with our attorneys and get more background on what it is we're delving into.
Mhm. Because, and we're the municipal committee,
Right.
but we're not the education committee. And so we need to have a better understanding of that. And I will also talk to Senator Campion, who's the chair of education, just to see if they want to weigh in with us also. Senator Clarkson?
I apologize. I'm sorry to have missed what sounds like a pretty interesting conversation. I was in Senate Appropriations for far too long. So I apologize. I'd rather have been here.
We will keep you informed and up to date.
Thanks.
Gwen?
Just a recommendation to have the School Boards Association.
I was just going to say
Okay.
that, yeah. We should have the School Boards Association also join us. So we will try to, I don't think we will take this up next week, although I know you want an answer pretty soon, but even if we made legislative changes, it wouldn't satisfy your need to have this done quickly, because if it's a legislative change that needs to happen, it would have to pass out of this committee, then it would have to pass the Senate, then it would have to go to the House, then it would have to pass the House, and then the governor would have to sign it. So you need to figure out how you're going to get this person appointed pronto without any help from us.
If I may, Senator, I'm familiar with that process that you just described, but the Mill River Board is planning on filling the vacancy on, I believe, April 7th at their first meeting in April. The statute says within 30 days of the creation of the vacancy, which was March 12th when George made his resignation effective. So you're right that you can't get any legislation passed in time for all that, but Clarendon does have the right to call for a special election. That would almost have to be after the vacancy was filled by the Mill River Board. They could call for a special election if they wanted to, if they weren't happy with Mill River. But again, I hope it doesn't come down to that. I hope it all just is, we come to an amicable, a candidate who everybody can live with.
I would suggest at this point that the Mill River Board give deference, give a lot of deference, not necessarily let them make the decision, but to the Clarendon Select Board, and really try to work with them so that they feel that they have had the residents of Clarendon have had their voice heard. And I don't think that should be that difficult. You get 3 members from the board and the 3 members from the select board to sit down and talk about it and figure out where you're going to go.
I would support that as well. Let Clarendon people decide for Clarendon right now until we can.
Really give deference to that process this time, even though, and then we'll look at it more and see what, because unfortunately, what will happen is if the Clarendon people really feel like they haven't been heard at all, it's going to add to the tension and the non-cooperation, I think, and you don't want that. So, all right. Any other questions from the committee?
Thank
Comments?
you all.
No, thank
Enjoy
you
the
all for coming.
weekend. Supposed to be very nice.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Right.
Anthony?